Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Safari Mack Returns to Africa. I'm Safari Mack, your guide and host, helping you make connections to the wild. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the West African nation of Gabon, where today we are hanging out here in Lope National Park, where in this national park is actually one of the biggest strongholds for a very colorful species of primate. The Mandrill, or known by their Latin name of Mandrillis sphinx. So we're going to get ready to take a look at this guy, but before we begin and move on with his troop, or his group, before we begin, if you're new to my channel, hit that like and subscribe button, check out my Facebook page on content on conservation, and if you have a question about animals or an animal request, you have to send me an email, which you will always find the link to down in the description below. But if you're ready, let's get started. Now, as we've been covering this group of animals so far this month, the mandrill, of course, is a kind of primate. But not just any primate. He is part of a group what is known as Old World monkeys. And so, the evolution of this special primate was basically by a chance of convergent evolution and special selection of bright facial and body coloration. Now, the mandrill, though, is not alone, as they do share a cousin in the Mandrillis genus known as the drill, or known by their Latin name of Mandrillis Cepheus. Though historically they were once described to be a kind of baboon, we now know through genetic research that their closest cousin is actually this guy. They are known as mangabeys. Now, I don't know if I'll do that species later on, but it's said that 4.5 million years ago, the mandrill split off from this primate and would eventually evolve into the creatures that we know of today. But it wouldn't be until between 1551 and 1558 that this guy, Conrad Gessner, would actually discover and bring a scientific depiction, and even illustration of the mandrill to the rest of the world. Now, in terms of their habitat, while they are well suited to living here in the tropical rainforest, they're also well adapted to wooded savannas, heavy African montane forest, and secondary forests that can go up 6,571 feet. Generally, the only place in Africa, if you wanted to go on safari to look for the mandrill, would be here. Not just in Gabon, but also Equatorial Guinea, a tiny bit of the Congo, as well as a good amount in the country of Cameroon. Now, in terms of their social life, these guys have it pretty big. In fact, biologists have recorded these primates living into groups of over 1,000 individuals. These groups, now we might call it a troop, like you call it with the baboons, or even a shrewdness, like you might call it with apes. But as this is in fact a kind of monkey, instead of being called a troop, though, their group name is what's known as a horde. Usually these hordes are made up of many different groups, where in each group there is one alpha male, that's this guy here, and the rest being females that she chooses to stay with to be her protector and defender against other males, as well as other threats in the rainforest, such as leopards, which are known to actively hunt these animals for food. Now, the male usually he is basically, as I said, he's in charge of his group, and he will be the father of all the babies within the group. Now, while the females stay in the same birth group for life, males will leave their families when they're around 9 years old to find their own family group and take over and become the father of that group. This is a great prevention of inbreeding. After around 6 months of pregnancy, mom usually gives birth to a single baby, and she does her part in nursing the baby and teaching it the ways of the wild. The father really doesn't do much in terms of protection, in terms of raising, but he is the protector of the group. So as long as he's around, the babies generally are safe. Now, because they are omnivorous like us, they'll feed on anything almost edible. They'll feed on fruit, they'll feed on insects, fungi, and occasionally they are known to actually feast on young animals, on small animals, such as worms, frogs, lizards, bird eggs, and even snakes sometimes, believe it or not. But of course, they are also known to actively hunt for smaller animals like small antelope species, such as the dukir, which you can find in the rainforests of Africa. However, when food is scarce, mandrills often take a bit of a huge risk in going into palm oil plantations to steal the fruits for food, which can unfortunately lead to conflict with the farmers. Now, let's continue on with their influence in human culture. Of course, I'm sure you all know Rafiki. He knows the way. Now, generally, Rafiki is considered to be a mandrill. However, in the 1994 release of The Lion King, he was depicted as somewhat of he looks like a little bit of a hybrid between a mandrill and a baboon. But as he says with his saying of Asante sana squash banana wewe mumuwini apana, which really does translate to how you are a baboon, and he is not. In 2019, though, they corrected this by making him a full mandrill, especially with how in the 1994 version he's depicted with a long tail, whereas in 2019, as well as the release of Mufasa, the Lion King, mandrills would really have a short tail. But besides the Lion King, the mandrill, in terms of African culture, they've actually, because of their colorations on their face, which is only found on the males, as you could see earlier, females are not quite as brightly colored. The males have that. But because of this, it's actually led many African cultures where they live close to wild mandrills to come up with beautiful, extravagant masks for traditional folklore, as well as other forms of tradition, such as ceremonies or parties. Now, let's talk about the wild things. The only wild thing I could tell you is that the mandrill have actually pretty big cheek pouches that open up beside their lower teeth and extend down to the sides of their neck. These pouches can contain almost a full stomach load of food when it's fully distended. This is helpful when they are foraging for food, since they're not really helping each other get food. Like, if one person is not getting food, they're not going to get it. It's every primate for itself. But because of these extended cheeks, they're able to store enough food so that if there's a hard time, they'll still have plenty to eat. And they use the back of their hand to actually push food out of their cheeks and down into their mouths. So I kind of thought that the cheek thing was more of a chipmunk deal. Now, unfortunately, the mandrill still does face challenges and problems. More specifically, loss of habitat through agricultural use or for the timber industry, as well as poaching, unfortunately, has led to a decline in the mandrill's population, at least 30% over a 24-year span. And even the bushmeat trade sees these animals as a kind of delicacy. Now, thankfully, there still is time. People are working hard to save the mandrill by replanting forests and getting communities involved to want to protect these animals rather than hunt them or destroy them. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time I have for this week's episode, so be sure to join me next week as we look into one of the smallest primates, the bush baby. But until then, I'll see you all out there.